Cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and I'll also, by the way, just in the event that I have any kind of technical glitches, both Ginny and Lori have the deck, so they can jump in and save the day. I just wanted to take like literally 2 minutes to just do a little bit of a kind of an intro speech, and then we'll go into the presentation. So what I wanted to say is that it kind of goes without saying that the landscape has been shifting precipitously for quite some time now, and the opportunities to pitch freelance have become harder to find. The other aspect of the freelance trade that is obvious but still needs to be kind of put out there is that despite inflation and our collective expertise, the pay rate for freelance articles has dropped considerably since the days that we all started writing. We all remember those dollar word articles, and now we're lucky if we get $100 for a 1,000-word article. So I'm not here to delve into the abysmal state of pay or the myriad ways that we're being replaced by AI. But what I am here to talk about is how to potentially shift the paradigm away from a sense of negativity and towards a view of opportunity. In other words, I'd like to try for all of us to be able to flip the switch from being reactive to proactive. So I'd also like to point out that I happen to be one of those writers that isn't necessarily always looking for a paid gig. I mean, my feeling personally, and this is again not the forum for this, but that if I get the opportunity to stay for 2 nights at a $400 a night hotel and I'm making $25 on an article, for me, that's okay. And I'm certainly not telling anybody else how to feel about what they do, but I just wanted to mention that fact. And so the other thing I wanted to say is that I personally have decided to expand my sphere beyond the possibilities of just travel outlets. So whether that equates to business writing or pitching sessions at a conference or trying to be asked to be a speaker at at a writing event, whatever that might be, I'm considering those as part of my pitches. Again, this is an opportunity to just share with you what I've done, and then you can do with it as you see fit and what works for you. There's also the thing that I wanted to say is that there's nothing to lose if you come up short. It's your own personal challenge. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. You can, succeed 50% of the time and fail the other 50. You might tell yourself that you're going to do 30 and 30 and you end up doing 10 and 30. Or even maybe just decide that it's not the right time and that you want to, be more organized and get back to it down the line. So I just wanted to kind of encourage everybody to just give it a whirl, give yourself, kudos along the way whenever you need them. And also just think of this as an opportunity to, as I said earlier, like shift the paradigm and just think about how, again, like we can maybe reclaim some of the power instead of feeling like we're powerless in a lot of ways. So the only other thing that I wanted to add is recently I was listening to a webinar, and the gal who was giving the webinar, she said, a lot of times we're encouraged to be a go-getter, and there's certainly nothing wrong with being a go-getter. But she said, but I also think it's equally important to be a go-giver. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this tonight, is because I'm hoping that I am giving you guys some inspiration and some tools that you can use. And I'd also like to encourage everybody to be helpful to one another, because we all could use, some help these days. And whether it's today or next week or down the line, I think paying it forward without any expectation of getting anything down the line, just being a go-giver, I think is a really good way to look at it. So, okay, without further ado, this is 30 and 30, and it was my personal challenge to send 30 pitches in 30 days. So the first thing for me that I considered is what types of outlets could I approach? So I've just provided a list here of the ones that I came up with. They're pretty self-explanatory, but I do also want to say that I think a lot of times that travel writers don't really think of business travel as something that they can pitch. The meetings and events industry is quite robust, and there is certainly a need for the travel writing in that regard. Also special interest groups. I mean, I'm just making this up, but let's say that you're a Civil War reenactor. So there's a magazine for that. And I don't know, maybe recently you went to Gettysburg and participated in something that you think Civil War reenactors would think is cool. So that it's that kind of a publication. Associations or groups. So obviously one of the ones that you belong to is BATW. We have an outlet available to members. So if you haven't already submitted an article to BATW, that's someplace that you should be mindful of approaching. The other thing, which we'll circle back to later, is alumni magazines. There are quite a few alumni magazines across the country. I myself happen to be an alumni of UW, SDSU, UCLA, and Cal State San Marcos. They all have magazines. Then the next one is regional publications. I have a fabulous editor with a publication here in the Pacific Northwest who I love working for. It's actually a freebie magazine, but that doesn't mean I don't get paid. So I also want you to be mindful of, if you see freebie publications out there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're also not going to be getting paid to write for it. And as I kind of mentioned earlier, the meetings and events space is something that everybody should consider. Then the next thing for me was who to reach out to. Previous clients, maybe that's fairly obvious, but perhaps you've only written for them once or it's been a while. But don't be afraid to reach out again, especially if if you hit it out of the ballpark. They have a lot of people clamoring for their time and especially their attention. And then things like AAA publications, they have their calendar laid out at the beginning of the year. So if they don't come back and ask you to pitch them again, or could you cover this in September, it's because they've already laid out who's doing what for the rest of the year. Professional bloggers. I don't blog. I'll never start a blog, but there are people out there who have a huge following and welcome guest bloggers. So that's another thing to consider. DMOs, you probably know what that is, but it's Destination Management Organization. So like, Visit Bellingham, where I live. They have content on their site, and I reach out to them frequently. Professional organizations, we kind of touched on earlier. Well-known publications, don't shy away from the Travel and Leisures, the AFARs, the Condé Nasts. And then also existing contacts. And what I mean by that is people within the industry that not necessarily editors. If you've maybe, like, I went to IMEX recently and met a couple of people who work for the San Antonio Visitors Bureau. So that's existing contact. Reaching out to them is also, something to consider. Okay, so the next thing is creating my ideas page and what went onto it. I don't know about everybody else here, but I am one of those people that literally an idea will come to me in the middle of the night or while I'm sitting, watching a television show or reading a magazine. And it's like, wait a minute, what about such and such? Or I didn't know that was a thing. So I ended up with all of these crazy, little scribbles all over the place. And then I have to try to remember where I put them, to fold it out and put it in my wallet, or, is it in some random book somewhere in my office, or, on the masthead of a magazine. So the first thing that I wanted to say was that I was mindful of trying to pull them all together and get them into one space so that I could actually have them all together in one place. So that kind of taps into the inspiration can come from anywhere. I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced this, but like recently I was up in Calgary. They took us to the Calgary Boot Company, where they make typically the cowboy boots. And they also make the boots for the Canadian Mounties. So, perhaps that wasn't something, I was actually there to write about the meetings industry, but, oh, well, that's cool. I didn't know all the Canadian Mounties boots came from here. So again, that's just an example of, inspiration coming to you from anywhere. Be ready to seize opportunities. I will get into this a little bit later, another slide, but something came recently over Gmail, and I took the opportunity to pitch something as a result. The next thing is, what am I interested in? So I think so many times writers try to figure out what's trendy or what's hip or what do these people want, and not to say that magazines aren't looking for specific topics, But if this is going to be a personal challenge or a personal goal of yours, something that you're doing for you, ask yourself what you're interested in, because if you're passionate about it, that passion will come through. And also, what would I like to learn more about? I recently was in Hawaii and read about two Europeans that helped King Kamehameha defeat the British. Well, there's now a very popular show on television, which perhaps you guys have seen, with Jason Momoa, Chief of War, and it taps into that. And I was like, why didn't I do something with it earlier? Also, what am I a member of? I kind of tapped into that as well a little bit earlier, but like, are you a member of AARP? I happen to be a member of Mensa. They have a magazine. Start asking yourself, what am I a member of, and how can I tap into that? And then I had also kind of tapped into this a little bit earlier, but just going from scribbled notes to one cohesive document. It was really hard to try to track everything and not, be able to focus on, where everything was all in one place. So the next part of the equation is choosing what publications to pitch to. Should I choose a publication to pitch to? Like, okay, I'm going to pitch to Travel and Leisure, and then I find the topic, or do I find the topic and then I choose the outlet? And then also, how much time do I spend researching a pitch? I mean, I spent an inordinate amount of time researching something that I wanted to pitch to Midwest Living, only to have them not even be remotely interested. So that's just something else to ask yourself. And then how do I keep track of each pitch? Again, I happen to have a Word doc, but if you feel like using an Excel spreadsheet or an alphabetized list, or organizing them by topic or publication, like whatever works for you. And then the last thing is returning to the well. So I'd kind of mentioned this earlier, but so there was a pitch that went out, or a call that went out via SATW for Texas meetings and events. And I reached out to the gal and sent her my clips. She said, well, we don't have anything right now, but I'll keep her name with me just in case. And then she ended up contacting me to write something for her, and it went great. And so now I have several more ideas that are perfect for her magazine. So don't forget about returning to the well, because you already have now established this relationship, even if it's just, you've only worked with each other once. So I'm hoping that this can be just a little bit interactive. Doesn't have to be 5 minutes, but what I'd like to do is at least take 3, so that I'm not just a talking head and you guys are absorbing. And I'd like you to do just a little bit of independent thinking based on what we've, kind of talked about so far. And just ask yourself the 4 following questions, because this will be kind of a nice way to start your roadmap towards creating your own challenge. So the first one is, what am I an expert at? I can't see who's here right now, but for example, Susan Alcorn, an expert at the Camino. David Laws, an expert at, computers and computer history. John Peniston, an expert on, the Big Island of Hawaii. And maybe it's things like, I don't know, you downhill skier, Bob Cooper. I think I, saw your smiling face there earlier. Maybe being in cross-country bike rides. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. But ask yourself what you're an expert at already going in. The next thing is, what topic do I want to learn more about? This is a great opportunity to ask yourself, I've always wanted to learn about archery. And so it's a great opportunity not only for you to learn about it, but then pitch an idea about it, because, you'll have this added benefit of not only learning about the topic, but then also getting an assignment out of it. And then this is fairly obvious to travel writers, but where am I going, or where do I want to go? And then the other thing, like I said, is, what groups am I a member of? So I'm just going to throw a couple out there. Like, I'm the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SATW, BATW, Mensa, alumni of UCLA, SDSU, CSUSM. So this is me, but so I'd like to just ask you guys for the next, 2 to 3 minutes to just, take that time to just write down the answers to those questions for you. And then we will move on to the next slide. I feel like I should have the Jeopardy thing playing in the background, but I didn't bring that. Thank you. Obviously, somebody in the room can carry a tune. Thank you for that. I'll give you guys about another 30 seconds and then we'll move on. Okay. So here are some examples from my Word doc that list various topics and possible outlets. As you can see, there is no kind of rhyme or reason to them. In my particular case, I wrote them down as they came to me. So F&W is food and wine. Crab is abundant here, and we have all kinds of people that go crabbing here, and it would be super easy to interview crabbers and chefs and people who are doing sustainable fisheries. And so I just was like, oh, that seems like that would be a very specific local idea for F&W. Along that same line, gooey duck. I don't know who out there is familiar with gooey duck. It's literally the most unusual mollusk you have ever seen. If you don't know what it looks like, you should take a look. But at any rate, so Lummi Island, which is where I live, there is a fisherman who lives here, and he dives for them off of the Lummi Indian Reservation. And then in 2026, I had gone to the Samhain celebration, which is the precursor for Halloween in Northern Ireland. Wrote that down along with a couple of little notes to self. Southern Living, Benet wafers. When I was in Charleston, everybody's all about them, but you don't hear about them here. Germany, there's a matchmaking tree that I've always wanted to research and learn more about. And again, I don't have a specific outlet. It's just the matchmaking tree is in Germany. This one's going to come back. American Indian magazine. We have a fabulous glass artist who's a Lummi Indian. His name is Dan Friday. And then Edible Seattle. I noticed that everything isn't just Seattle and Edible Seattle. And so I wanted to pitch two ideas, Lummi Island, and then also a place in British Columbia. And then, back again, we are to Benet wafers. Also, why not food and wine? I mean, it can be Southern Living and it can be food and wine. Okay, so this is what I was talking about in terms of American Indian magazine. So this is the official publication of the Smithsonian's Museum of the American Indian, and never heard of it. But I was in the library the other day, and they have a whole magazine section. And I saw it there. And the reason I was interested is because I'm going to Oahu to visit my son, and his girlfriend has been taking hula lessons. So I pick it up and I start reading it. And as you can see from the cover, they have an article on Peru. Okay, well, it's American Indian magazine, but then obviously American translates to Central and South America. So when I made my way through that, I thought, well, what could I pitch? And so I pitched a profile on glass artist Dan Friday. This is some of his work down below. And again, why me? Because I know him personally, I have access to him, I admire his work, and I have a connection to the same tribal lands that his ancestors are from. So that kind of answers the why me question. Um, this is tapping back into something that I had mentioned earlier, that inspiration can come at any time. So be prepared. So Chuckanut Writers Conference has been going on here for I think maybe either 47 or 66 years. It's been around a while. And recently I got an email asking for some session ideas. And so it was a call for pitches to submit ideas for sessions at the Writers Conference. It happens next year, I think maybe in April or May. At any rate, so I thought, well, there are a couple of things I could definitely do sessions about. So I actually came up with 3 ideas, and I'll circle back to those later on in the presentation. But I actually ended up submitting 2 of them. And will I know whether or not they've been selected? I won't until after the first of the year. But again, as I had mentioned earlier, for me, part of the pitching that I decided to do was outside of the realm of articles. And so this is a perfect example of that. Okay, so this isn't necessarily what's going to work for you, but I did want to go over what my rules are and how you could think about crafting the rules that work for you. So as I had mentioned earlier, for me, the pitches did not have to be travel related, but they did have to result in an assignment of some kind. So for example, the Writers Conference wouldn't be travel related, but it's a pitch and it would be an assignment. And the queries didn't have to be 1 a day. So if it's 30 and 30, I said to myself, 1 a day sounds great, but there's going to be some days where I'm just not in the mood, or I'm traveling, or the day's super busy. And so I allowed myself the opportunity to say, well, if I do 3 one day or 8 one day because the muse is with me, and then the next day I do none, that's okay. The other thing is it's okay to pitch more than 1 idea to the same outlet. So I think gone are the days. I don't know, maybe some people still stick to it, but gone are the days of, oh, well, you're going to pitch something to 1 outlet and wait to hear back. I actually have never done that, and certainly am not doing it now. And then also it's okay to pitch the same idea to several outlets simultaneously, which I just, kind of talked about. And then the pitching more than 1 idea to the same outlet. So again, I don't like to pitch too many ideas at the same time, because I feel like chances are an editor isn't going to say, oh, I love all 5 of these ideas. They're going to pick 1. So I'll send out 2 or maybe 3, and then wait to see if one of those resonates. And if so, great. We can always come back to the others later. And number 5, we kind of already talked about, as well as number 6. And then I had mentioned this a little bit earlier too, just giving myself permission to succeed and to fail. And then celebrating the victories, but simultaneously learning from the misses, and being mindful of people's time and busy schedules. I have found during this process that shorter queries work better. Some people some publications want you to send a whole article before they'll consider it. But as a general rule, I have found that when it comes to pitching, more succinct is better. And then the last part of that is don't continue barking up the wrong tree. We will come back to that in a little bit, because there's a publication that I pitched quite a bit to and was not successful. So anyways, okay, let's turn our attention to that. So that publication was Midwest Living Magazine. I sent 6 pitches and I got 0 assignments. So as you can see from my graphic, I completely struck out. However, I do want to share the following with you. So of course you can read this on your own. But this is an email that I got back from Julia, who's the travel editor for Midwest Living. And what I did is I sent in several queries and they didn't pick up on any of them. And so what I did is I sent a follow-up email and I said, what am I doing wrong? Why are you not? Because I think these are all fabulous ideas. Why didn't any of them resonate with you? And she was nice enough, as you can see at the top, to say that they typically don't provide feedback because they're very busy getting pitches all the time. But she did give me some insights into why they didn't pick up on what I submitted. And also, it's not included in this little clip here, but weirdly, two of them had already been pitched previously from writers that they did say yes to, and they were already in the hopper. So at any rate, it was lovely that she responded and told me why, but still, of course, doesn't change the fact that I didn't get an assignment from any of the articles that I pitched to them. So the follow-up to this is sometimes you just aren't meant to be together. So what if it's a great idea, but it's just a wrong outlet? So this was the pitch on the right-hand side that I sent, one of the pitches that I sent to Midwest Living, which is about curling and different places that you could go curling, as you can see, across the Midwest, right? Get involved with the ancient sport of curling. And here's my kind of like my little intro, blurb to my little hook. So Julia wasn't interested. Okay. Well, Mount Baker Experience, which is that regional outlet that I work with here, their winter issue is coming up. So I called Nolan and I said, hey, what about places to go curling in the Pacific Northwest? He goes, love it. So I've already done the research. Doesn't work for Midwest Living, but with a slight shift, still a travel article, still the same topic, but just a different outlet. So although it didn't result in an assignment from Midwest Living, it did result in an assignment with Mount Baker Experience. So now what I'd like to do is just take another short break, and this time just to ask yourself to think about a pitch that got rejected and what other outlets that you could possibly submit it to. Or as an alternate, select a high profile magazine, like Why Not Shoot for the Moon, and then draft a very quick pitch on a topic of your choosing. Like, I've never written for TNL, I've never written for Condé Nast, I've never written for AFAR. And I feel like those are the gold standard. So there's nothing saying that you can't shoot for the moon and pick one of those high profile magazines and just decide what you'd like to submit to them. So again, just take a couple of minutes and just think about, as I said, one of the two, either a pitch that got rejected and where else you might think about sending it, or one of those high profile magazines that we all know about, and something that you could pitch to them. Let's give you guys about another minute. Hopefully that light bulb is going off all over the place. And just to throw out there that those high profile magazines, as I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I think I'm going to do a little bit of research on that matchmaking tree in Germany and go after one of these. Why not? Okay. So one of the things that I had mentioned in the blurb when this got sent out was how to find new and niche publications. And to take a little bit of a step back, originally when we were putting the idea for this presentation together, that's kind of where we started. that was going to be the sole kind of focus. But I felt like that was part of a bigger picture. And so what's nice is that this is sort of dovetails very easily into the same topic of finding those new and niche publications. So again, I had mentioned earlier, like going, back to the well, but I think oftentimes people in a variety of different ways get used to doing that, right? It's kind of like donor fatigue. Organizations continue to go back to the same donors over and over and over because they've been successful in the past and they've been able to count on them. And then eventually like that donor hits a level where it's like, I'm done, I'm out. I'm going to turn my attention to another organization to give my money to. And so I think that we all could theoretically run the risk of that happening with the publications that we've written for if we continue to just keep going back to them over and over and over. So let's expand the gene pool. Again, this is something that, we talked about earlier, and hopefully you guys have spent some time thinking about. But so as I had mentioned earlier, these are some of the groups that I belong to or I'm a member of. And Costco is another one. Costco's got a magazine. They hire freelancers. USAA, AAA, and also civic clubs. Civic clubs have publications all over the country. And if you're a member of one, you can pitch an idea to them. The other thing too, the other thing too that I wanted to mention is doing some physical research. So going to a magazine rack. Barnes & Noble is great for that. There are all kinds of magazines on the Barnes & Noble rack that I've never heard of. And so if you are interested in anything like, I don't know, knitting, well, maybe that's a publication that you could pitch to. The library, I had mentioned earlier, going to the library and seeing American Indian. Never heard of it before, but there it is sitting there on the shelf. Also consider freebie publications. Like I was saying, Mount Baker Experience is free, but they pay. And the next one is following other writers that you admire and see where they're being published. So there's nothing to say that if, let's just say Ginny is being published in, I don't know, Outside Magazine, that like can't pitch them as well. If they're doing the type of writing that you admire and are aspiring to do, then that's a perfectly legitimate place to turn your attention to. The other one that I think is super interesting is, and I just came up with this on my own, but past Lowell Thomas winners for their outlets. I went back and looked at the 2025 winners for this last year, and sure, some of them are the ones that you're familiar with, but there are a lot that I have no idea what they are, but clearly they were an outlet that allowed somebody to produce something that was an award-winning article. So I, would definitely look at least the last 3 or 4 years worth of Lowell Thomas winners and take a look at what the outlets are. And then also online outlets. I think that we have a tendency to still be kind of focused on print, and that's the place to be. But there are way more opportunities online than there are in print. And even Midwest Living has a completely separate online division versus print division. And so you would be pitching articles to 2 completely different editors, and they have completely different sets of parameters in terms of what they're looking for. And the last is super interesting, and we're going to come back to that in a wee bit, which is letting AI help you find new outlets. Okay. Oops, sorry, went the wrong way. Okay, so the other thing is I think that it's lovely to learn from somebody else's mistakes. So perhaps you don't make them yourself. So let's first talk about what didn't work for me. What didn't work was a pitch per day, which is what I originally had said that I thought I wanted to do. All kinds of stuff came up, which, whether it was, having to deal with family stuff, or I didn't feel well that day, or I got invited to do something fun, or I was traveling and I wasn't in the mood. So a pitch per day Did not work for me. The other thing was going down a rabbit hole. Sometimes I spent so much time either researching a publication, trying to find who to pitch to, trying to find their writer's guidelines, or just getting super excited about a potential topic that I ended up going down the rabbit hole, and time-wise, it just didn't pay off. The other, or the next one is missed deadlines. So when I was talking earlier about pitching ideas to the writers conference, I had 3 ideas that I wanted to pitch, and the deadline was October 31st. And I didn't get around to formulating my pitches until the day before. So I got 2 of them out the door, but then I just couldn't pull it together to send the 3rd one out. So missed the opportunity to suggest a 3rd one, which may at the end of the day have been the, maybe the one that they would have been most interested in. And then, sorry about the typo there, sent a query and then learned that they're not taking them. So that happened recently. I sent a query into Authors Publish or authorpublish.com. Fortunately, within like an hour, I got a response, but it was, hey, we're not taking pitches anymore. And if I'd have, just done a smidge of research before I sent the query, it would have saved me the time that I spent putting into crafting the query. On the positive side, what went right? I was able to reuse pitches that I already had. So we talked earlier about the curling pitch, and that's a perfect example of that. I also made new contacts for future pitches. Well, several people said, thanks, it's just not right for us. But please, come back and send us future ideas. So that door was opened. I also learned what did and didn't work for me, which you can just, take a look at to the left, and realize that some pitches might still bear fruit. So just again, to touch base with the Chuck and Nut Writers Conference, I won't find out until January. I also pitched some ideas to a couple of AAA publications. They don't even have their meetings on what they're going to run for next year until the end of the year. And then they still kind of plug in some holes. So, am I going to get some of these coming back somewhere down the line because I've sown the seeds? Hopefully. And now also I have a healthy list of new outlets that I can, keep going back to. It doesn't just have to be for this particular challenge. So this slide is really about you and your personal challenge and what I'd like you to take away from this. And so before you start that, and not right now, but what I'd really like you to do is take some time about how you want to structure your personal challenge. So just throwing some ideas out there. Do you want to do 1 a day for a week? Do you want to do for a weekend? Because maybe you work Monday through Friday. How about 5 and 5? You can do 5 and 5 weeks or 5 and 5 days. Call it done. The same pitch to 6 different outlets, or targeting 5 high-end publications that pay really well. I mean, whatever it is that you want your challenge to be, set it up and then you own it. That you have the opportunity to make it what you want it to be. The other thing is to just be realistic about time limitations and how committed you'll be. I wrote this kids book, and while it's not about Halloween, it's prime season for selling is during the spooky season. And so I found myself doing writer events and readings and going to, bookstores and marketing and all that kind of stuff during the month of October. And that really cut into my idea of 30 and 30. So it wasn't the best time of year for me to do that. So time limitations, I think, is a really good thing to keep in mind. And then the other thing is, do you want a cheerleader to support you? Do you want to go it alone at the end of the day? Do you want a spouse, a partner, a friend, a family member to go to and say, hey, this really took a lot out of me, but by golly, I got out 4 today. Or maybe find a partner in crime. Maybe somebody else at BATW might like to do it. And then you guys can, help each other. So now we kind of come back to what Amy had mentioned earlier. And so within the BATW members area, there is a list that Amy put together. I think maybe it's been there. You can correct me if this is incorrect, but it's been there for at least 2 or 3 years. And it's a pretty extensive list of outlets. And there are links to each one of these outlets. Some of them have what they pay, some don't. And, here's the thing, like at the end of the day, maybe things have changed. Maybe they're no longer taking assignments. Maybe they're paying less. Maybe they're paying more. Like, who knows? But this is a challenge that I would just like to put out to you to kind of like get the ball rolling. So the first is, so I'm calling it the 1, 2, 3 challenge. And the first would be select one of the outlets that's listed on the BATW site, come up with 2 ideas for that outlet, and then pitch them within 3 days' time. That's a pretty easy 1, 2, 3. So I feel like that would be a great way for everybody to kind of, get the ball rolling and not overcommit and have a lot of the available information there already to help you on your path. So now what I would like to do real quick, so hopefully you can still see my screen here. We don't need that one, sorry. Okay, so let's go back to AI. I know a lot of people aren't a big fan, and neither was I until I was going back to school to get my certification in project management. And ChatGPT really came in handy for a lot of the stuff that I didn't want to do. So this document shows that I went to ChatGPT, the free version. I don't have the one that you have to pay for. And I asked ChatGPT to provide me with a list of California-based publications that accept freelance submissions. And these are the answers to the initial prompt and the subsequent tweaks that I made afterwards. So this is from ChatGPT. 10 California-based or California relevant publications. What the publication is, what the niche is, what the submission process is, what they're kind of looking for, yada, yada, yada. Now, you can't take everything like completely verbatim, right? But this at least gets you started. So the next thing I did was I said, okay, what about magazines or outlets that pay freelance writers and would be good fits for travel stories about women hikers? And I just randomly picked that topic. Again, I got a bunch of different publications, how much they pay, what they're kind of looking for. And then lastly, I gave it another prompt and I said, what about traveling with pets? And so again, this is what ChatGPT provided to me in, 5 minutes time, which obviously would take me a lot longer to find out on my own. Like this, I haven't looked into any of these just yet, but Motorhome magazine, I'd never even heard of it. But if that ends up being a viable outlet, well, isn't ChatGPT worth it? The other thing I wanted to say is that if you haven't used it before, you will be asked if the bot would like you to create a spreadsheet, and maybe that's something that you would find helpful. And look at this one with 20 to 25 publications, which is even more in depth than the 10 that were originally provided. So now what I'm going to do is just show you just a handful of URLs that are relevant. So, that's me. You don't need that. Okay, so this is the one that we were talking about for your 1, 2, 3 challenge. So as you can see, this is available to everybody on the BATW site. Look at all of the outlets there are contained here. Some of them, as I mentioned, specify what the word count is, but each and every one of these has a link that you can click onto, and you can go and see, like, what are they looking for? Are they still accepting? Are they still in business? Like, whatever. I mean, it is an amazing resource that a lot of time and energy went into, and it's there for you to take advantage of. So this then is, as I had mentioned earlier, this is the 2025 Lowell Thomas winners. You can go onto their website and they have a list of all the people who won. So, Afar and, the Washington Post, Epoch Times, maybe some of you are familiar with it, maybe not. Adventure Journal, the Red Bulletin, bicycling. What's another one that was down here? It was like East West. Hang on one second. Or this one, like Range. I've never heard of it in my life, but by golly, somebody wrote for that magazine, and again, wrote an article that was, well written enough to have won an award. So use that as a resource. And I had mentioned earlier about groups. So I don't know if anybody out there is a Cal alumni, but by golly, they have trips that they do for alumni, and they have travel stories and information, details, destination guides, like whatever, that they also offer. So again, take a look at some of the groups that you're a part of and see if there isn't a way that you can tap into the fact that you are a member of that group. Okay, so this is Edible. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Edible, but again, it's a free publication, but they pay their writers. And they apparently every year, I just got an email about this, all of the editors of Edible magazine get together and they vote on different categories like best feature story. Edible Seattle, I'm all excited about that because I have a couple of ideas for them. And clearly, their articles are some of the top ones across the country. And it's super easy to go to Edible and find out where these magazines are. I can't tell you if they want you to be a local, or if, for example, let's just say maybe you're taking a trip to Louisiana and you want to write about rice harvesting. Like, will Edible Louisiana take that? I don't know. But I mean, it's another great outlet because there are so many different edible publications across the United States. And again, I had mentioned this earlier, but I would be remiss in not saying that you all belong to BATW. And this is a really lovely outlet that a handful of very dedicated editors have put together and stuck with. And there just are some really great articles here. And at the end of the day, whether it's a reprint of something that you had, published previously, or you have an idea for a piece that for whatever reason nobody has picked up on, this gives you the opportunity to write about something that you're passionate about or that you've wanted to write about, or maybe even like, hey, a year ago I was treated to this lovely staycation and I would like to be able to get these guys coverage, and this is a perfect outlet for that. So I'm going to stop sharing. I know that we have a few minutes for some questions, and hopefully that wasn't too much of a talking head on my part, and that you guys ended up with some usable information and came away feeling inspired.
I have a question.
Sure.
For all your pitches that are like cold call things to publications you haven't published in before, what do you include? How do they know who you are?
Well, I always include links to my most recent articles. So if you've got like if you have a personal website, like I know Ginny's is gorgeous. I mean, I would include a link to that, but that's what I do.
Okay.
Erin, I put this in the chat, but I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with rejection? I've heard this idea of going for the no's, make your goal be to get 30 no's, that at least it gives you a sense of satisfaction that you've accomplished something instead of feeling rejected every time you get a no. But do you have any tips for, I'm sure, when you have that perfect pitch and you think it's perfect for a publication and you either don't hear back or they reject it, it hurts. What tips do you have for dealing with rejection?
Well, again, we're all unique in that regard, but so I just feel like it's, kind of like going on a blind date, right? Like sometimes, you're like, oh my God, I'm this fabulous person and I think he's fabulous. And yet he's like, I'm going to pass. So for example, like with Midwest Living, I was saying that I sent out 6 pitches and she picked up on none of them. But one of them is on a couple that does historic restorations in Chicago. And I just know it's a fabulous story and just needs a home. So really, I look at it more, it's not about me personally, because I know that I'm a good writer. It's that just doesn't happen to be the topic at the time. And sometimes, Amy, maybe you've experienced this before too. Like, I don't know, maybe it's, you come out with an idea about, I don't know, flying with dogs on a plane. And it's like, oh, nobody does that. Nobody cares about that. And then dang, 2 years later, all of a sudden it's a thing. So I don't really, for me anyways, I just don't take it personally. And if I believe in the idea, then I hang on to it and feel like it'll just find a home elsewhere.
Hey, so I helped found this website called dogtracker.com. Anything you want to know about dog travel? Give me a holler. I'm not writing for it anymore. My dog's died. I lost him.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had a question that I put in the chat. Do you exclusively pitch places you've been, or do you pitch with an eye toward going, or do you plan a trip and then pitch before you go, or what's your pattern?
I do both. And especially if I'm writing for the meetings and events industry, so let's say, for example, if I know that I'm going to be writing about San Antonio, I also would like to go see Austin. So what I'll do is then I'll reach out to my editor and say, hey, you think you might be interested in something about Austin? Because I'm going to be in San Antonio and Austin's an hour and a half away. Yeah, sure. But like I was saying, also, just, sometimes I end up on trips, and I'm sure this happens to you guys, where, I go to write about a certain thing, and then you discover this amazing topic that comes up, and you're like, wait, what? Like, I'm not going to get into it, but there's something I found out about on a trip I went on recently about Santas. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to be pitching that about Santas. Like, who knew? I went there to write about the meetings industry, but then now it'll be another thing about Santas.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I was going to say, I wrote for meetings and events magazines for 10 years. I helped start one. I kept writing for another one. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of crossover from the newspaper travel section field. And I don't know, I could still be doing it. I'm just trying to be kind of retired.
Okay. Well, that's fair too. So I actually haven't looked at any of the questions in the chat, and I'm trying to be mindful of everybody's time, but is there anything, and I'm happy to share the deck. And I'm also, like I was saying earlier, trying to be, not that I haven't been in the past, I like to think, but I am really trying to be mindful of being a go-giver. And all of us have something unique to bring to the table. So I don't look at other travel writers as being competition in any way, shape, or form. So if you feel like there's something that I can help you with or answer, or even like I was saying earlier, need a cheerleader, want to be a partner in crime, like I'm more than happy to do any of that stuff.
2 things before you go, Erin. How many pitches were accepted? Did we hear that total? I know it's only been 30 in 30 days, and maybe none of them got accepted right away, but you expect some will be.
So I just want to clarify that I did not send out 30 and 30. That was my goal. So I fell short of my goal.
Okay.
That being said, again, I don't know, like, for example, the 2 pitches that I submitted for the writers conference, I won't know until, down the line. Okay. But I will say that of the ones that I sent out, I got 5 assignments.
You did?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
So
and do you use an Excel spreadsheet to catalog your pitches, or how do you keep your pitches all in one portal, and know who you've pitched what to?
Yeah, so I was saying earlier that I am super old school and I just use a Word doc. One of these days, maybe I'll get around to organizing it. But I would shoot myself if I tried to figure out how to use Excel. So I just basically put down either the publication and then a bunch of ideas underneath it, or I put the idea and a bunch of publications underneath it. So for example, like the Bene wafers from South Carolina. So if I could Bene wafers, and it's like Southern Living, Food and Wine, Edible Charleston, like, so that could be one. Or conversely, like Edible Seattle, I could do Stevenson, British Columbia, Lemmy Island, blah, blah, blah. So that's just kind of the way that I'm doing it.
Okay.
I'm just curious how you send out all these cold call pitches.
I don't know. I mean, I just sort of assume everybody does, but
You have to send it with a lot of resume or a lot of links to your work so they know who you are.
no, not really. I mean, I think at the end of the day, honestly, if people are interested in the pitch, they can look you up. I mean, it's pretty easy to find, gone are the days of having to like include the Xerox, copies, with your, letter. But also, I think that just being a member, like I do usually mention, I'm a member of SATW and BATW, and even if I'm a member of BATW, like, okay. Or if, for example, I was pitching, like I had an article in Mensa magazine, like, well, I'm a member of Mensa, so there's already, kind of a tie there.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, and not everybody here is a member of SATW, and I understand that, but the member newsletters that go out, I don't think that they're on a set time. I think they go out, not member newsletter, but like if somebody's looking for something, or like, hey, I'm on assignment, I'm going to Tahiti. Does anybody need an article on Tahiti? Conversely, the assignment that this isn't one of my 30 and 30, but I got an assignment to write on a luxury RV camping for AAA Oregon. And I had responded to a call for pitches that came out from SATW. And while they didn't pick up on any of my pitches, the editor liked the pitches enough that she was like, hey, I want to give you an assignment. So, again, like just being willing to jump in the deep end.
As an editor, I can say if someone hasn't written for me before, I expect that they'll put in a few lines of a bio of who they are. And the bio should be well written. Even if it's just 2 or 3 sentences, it should be succinct and give me a sense of who they are so that I have the confidence. Okay, I've never heard of this person before, but they write well. And I assign stories to people who've never written for me before based on, a cold pitch all the time.
The other thing, thanks, Amy, for that. The other thing I want to say is that now, again, this is what works for me, but I like to pitch what will be the first paragraph of my article. So
That's good.
Then if they pick up the article, I already have my intro written. So, and that, that's the hook, right? So you need to, lure them in right away. And so again, anyways, it's not like, hey, I really love your magazine, I'd like to write for you, or I've been writing for 23 years, or like whatever it is. It's the first paragraph of what would be the article. That's how I do it.
Yeah, that's great.
What's the turnaround time dealing with magazines? In other words, you send out the pitch, how long are you going to be waiting to hear something back, or will you hear back?
So I think it depends, right? Like, for example, like I was just saying, AAA. I mean, they had decided last year what they were going to do for the calendar year this year. So I already knew that my piece was going to appear in the summertime. But, so I'd gotten the assignment the previous year because they already mapped everything out. Conversely, like Mount Baker Experience, they have 4 quarterly issues. And I know that their deadline for submission is 6 weeks before the issue comes out. So I'm going to pitch him like 8 to 9 weeks before. So if it's like a December 1st, then I'm going to be pitching him mid-October.
But how ready are you to write the story? Have you done all the research necessary?
No, enough to, if it's something I don't know about, like for example, curling, who knew?
My grandmother was a champion curler in upstate New York.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Well, I may interview you. But anyway, so who knew? It started in 1541.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of like, so, I think if it's something you don't know much about, of course, you're going to have to do some background research. But the other thing, and maybe this is helpful, maybe it isn't, but years ago, I heard Nora Roberts speaking at a conference. And for those of you who don't know who she is a very prolific romance writer. And one of the people in the audience said to her, how do you have all of these different women, all these different heroines who have these amazing careers, and how do you possibly research all these different careers? Like, do you have a full-time staff? And she said, I get kids' books, because when you go to the kids section of the library, they'll have books on different professions, and they're very succinct. They cut right to the chase. They give you all the stuff that you need to know. And I thought, that's freaking brilliant. So if there's ever a topic that I don't really know much about, then I'll go look and see if there's a kid's book about it.
Will your slide deck be available afterward?
Absolutely. Happy to share.
Thank you. Just look on the website then.
I don't know how that works, but I'll get with Ginny.
Well,
Okay.
I can tell you, December 1st with the brand new website update, which we have every month on the 1st, I post the YouTube, an announcement that it's up on YouTube, this presentation. And I will also, because I've got the slide deck, give in that article on the front of the website, give the link to the slide deck.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny.
Another thing too, I'd just like to ask of everybody is, so this is, again, this is just me sharing with you guys what I did, and, you know, hopefully it was helpful. Even if it's a smidge helpful, like even if you took one thing away, like, you know, great. But in the event that I end up sharing this with other groups of writers, what would be super helpful and lovely for me is to have you tell me, hey, this was super helpful, and this maybe not so much, or hey, I would really like to have known more about this. Like, anyways, just get some feedback from me. That would be great too.
Thank you, will do.
Okay.
Fantastic, Erin.
Yeah, great job.
Okay. Are we good?
Yep.
Has all the chat things been acknowledged? Otherwise, I'm out to have a taco.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're more than welcome. And I hope that you guys all were inspired enough to create your own challenges, even if it's the 1, 2, 3. Just go do it.
Yeah. It provides more energy and excitement for me to continue pursuing. So
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Ciao to all.
Take care.
Buenas noches.
Thanks, Erin. Have a good taco.
Thank you.